Hello there folks, how you doing? I thought I would give you a wee glimpse at my bike and maybe after that I'll show you the garden. I've been working in the garden all morning, so I haven't been able to get out and about very much this summer, and so there's been a dearth of videos on the channel. I explained during that last video when Mo and I were up in Strawberry Cottage that we were in China for 6 weeks, and that took a big bite out the summer for us. Anyhow, I'm really enjoying my time at home and trying desperately to catch up on the garden. But I have been working away on this bike. I mentioned this bike, probably 6 months or more ago. So this is Surly Krampus. It's a very early 29er. I don't know, it might actually be the first. If it's not, it's amongst the first of the 29-inch wheel mountain bikes. It's a 29 plus. So I'm just going to give you a quick intro to it, and hopefully I'm going to get it out onto the trails in the not too distant future. So Surly Krampus, it's a large size. My Genesis Caribou that you've seen many times is also a large, but this mountain bike replaces my old mountain bike, which is in behind me there, and that was an extra large. And my touring bike over there is also an extra large. So at 6'2", I just kind of fall in between large and extra large. I can ride both, but the geometry on this is it's quite long, and I really felt that the large was big enough. I've done about 200 miles on it now, there or thereabouts, and it feels really good. I'm really pleased with the size. So I'll give you a quick intro to what I've been doing with it. So it's set up with a set of Jones bars on the front, with 2.5-inch rise, so very much a kind of sit up and beg style of riding. I've got my Brook saddle on the back. I've got Surly racks, front and back. I'll bring the camera in closer so you can see that in a minute. And I've gone for a sort of hybrid approach with the luggage. I'm running a 1x12 system with a really low couple of gears for climbing, so it might reduce the hiker bike that I have to do on some of the tougher trails that I ride. So I've decided to do that. So yeah, pretty low geared, but I think it will be okay for me. I've built it with it's got halo rims on it and halo hubs as well, and these tyres, these kind of brown wool tyres, which I think actually look quite nice, are Terravale 2.8s. It's tubeless ready, but I'm running it with tubes. I prefer tubes because it's much easier for trackside repairs. If you get a puncture, carrying a spare tube, all you have to do is drop the wheel, swap over the tube, bit of air, and then you're good to go. I'm going for a kind of hybrid system for the easier parts of the year in terms of weather. So I've got these Ortlieb gravel bags. They're 12.5 litres each, so 25 litres between the two, and I'll get pretty much all my summer camping gear in there. I've got an Ortlieb frame bag. It's the 4-litre one, and then I've got a wee Rhino pack sitting on the top there where I can put bits and pieces, usually my telephone and stuff like that. And then my my trail mix and my food on the go sits in the wee Jones bar on the front. So I've got a Jones bag, a Rhino walk bag, and a few Ortlieb bags on it. And I'm going to put a Paradise saddle bag, an old school saddle bag, on the back, just because I want to. But also because I'm getting a bit tired of riding along with a rucksack on with all my camera gear in it. So I'm going to try and thin down the camera gear for some of the bike adventures, and I'm going to see if I can store them in a wee Paradise traditional saddle bag that will go onto the loops of the Brook saddle and either fix around the seat post there, or I might be able to fix it to the back of the Surly rack, just to see, I just want to see what's the most comfortable. So yeah, that's about it. Oh, I've got 3 bottle cages. I've got 2 mounted up front, and I've got one under there. I always put one under there because it gives the crank a wee bit of protection if you go down on a rock, which I did on that cycle through the Cairngorms, where I went from south to north, starting at Braemar, if you remember that trip, and I actually managed to break the bottom cage mount, the bottle mount. I hit a rock so hard. So let me bring you in and I'll show you some of the stuff a little bit closer up. I think you can just about see that. So it's a Surly Krampus 29 plus mountain bike. That's my Jones bars on the top, my Brooks saddle, these fancy Terravale brown wall tyres that I mentioned. You can see my climbing gears, my low gears on the back there. So 1x12. I'm using SRAM, and I'm also using SRAM braking. The whole bike is mechanical. There's no hydraulics in the bike at all. I decided that I didn't want the hassle of hydraulics. In terms of the front, I've got this massive rack on the front that I can put my tent, my sleeping bag, my pack craft if I decide to take the pack craft with me. And then in terms of luggage, I've got the wee Jones bag there tucked into the handlebars. I've got a new mount for the GoPro, this here, which I bought in China and I hope is going to be better than all the other ones I've tried. This is about attempt number 4 or 5 to handlebar mount a camera, but they've all shaken loose, so I'm going to see if that one works. Then little Rhino walk bag. I've got my Ortlieb 4 litre there, and the Ortlieb 12.5 litres. So 12.5, it's 25, 29. So I've got about 30 litres plus of luggage capacity, and I can mount things on here. So the idea is in the summertime and in the late spring, early autumn, I can run fairly light, so it's a sort of hybrid bike packing system. But you can see the amount of ironmongery that I've got on the bike. These Surly racks are steel, they're not aluminium racks, so the bike is heavy. But the idea of running it heavy is that in the winter time I can put high volume panniers on the back, and although I'm just carrying the same stuff, so essentially there'll be a sleep system in one of these bags, the sleep system will take up 3 times the volume of my summer sleep system, but do exactly the same job. So I'm going to get, I think I'm going to buy some new panniers. I've got my old Ortlieb, but I think I'm going to go for some form of Ortlieb classic pannier, but maybe with a flip top on them, which I know some people are not so keen on because of waterproofing and stuff, but bearing in mind that everything that's inside them, inside these bags, is going to be double bagged and dry bags, I'm not too worried about that. So I can put fairly large volume panniers on the back, and I've got this space here for carrying stuff if I need it, and then I've got up front where I can put, in the winter time, I can put a bigger tent. The reason I've explained before several times actually, the reason I like a bigger tent in the winter time is because by 4 o'clock in the afternoon it's dark and it's not light until 8 o'clock the following morning. You've got a lot of tent time to kill, and if you're in a tiny little bivvy tent it can be quite cramped and claustrophobic. Having a bigger tent, a bit of space, getting your gear in with you is all really helpful. I've gone for stainless steel bottle cages mounted on the forks, and then, as I said, one under here which will give a little bit of protection because there is no guard on that SRAM crank there. So really quite a simple setup, but it's taken me a wee while to build this bike up, mostly because I've been waiting on parts. So it's an American bike with American racks, and it's taken me a wee while to secure the material. It's not going to completely replace my fat bike. The fat bike will still get out and about when I'm getting it really mucky and muddy, and although they're both large frames, the Caribou is a significantly smaller bike, and also much shorter, so it's easier to fit it onto the Packraft, and it's got a really simple dropout system for the wheels on this, so it's easy to take the Caribou apart and stack the wheels up on top of the frame on the Packraft. The dropout system on this, you can see its rear exit, and that can be really fiddly when you're out and about. It's not quite so easy to drop the wheel on that, so it was a consideration when I was looking at the bike. Was I, going to take that type of dropout, because I know that they can be fiddly. A lot of my vintage bikes have got that type of dropout on them. However, I decided to put through axles in, so in fact I can drop the wheel straight down by taking the axle out. So that's the bike. You can see that I've still got loads of spacers above the handlebars here. I'm not going to cut this tube. I'm just going to keep it like that so I can actually raise or lower this depending on how I feel. It's taken me a wee while to get it to this height, which seems to be the optimum for me for my riding style, so I think it's probably going to stay there, but just in case I decide to raise the bars, I shall just leave these spacers there. So that's the bike, folks. I don't think there's much more I can say about it. I'm really pleased with the way that it's come out. It rides really well. So the next task is to get it out and about and show you in operation. I'm not quite sure when that's going to be. Mo and I are thinking about doing a little bit of a bike tour, but if I do a bike tour, it's going to be an on-road bike tour, because Mo's not so keen on trail riding, especially single track riding, so it'll probably be a cycleway type tour and maybe quieter roads in the Highlands of Scotland in preparation for a tour that we would like to do overseas, and that I think will be done on a different bike. So this bike has been built up for a very specific purpose, so it's a case of watch this space. We'll see if we can find time to do that bike tour, and then you'll be able to see which bike I choose to go on that tour. So I said I was going to give you a wee glimpse of the garden, what I've been up to mostly since I came back from our long tour in China. So I'll do that now, and then I'll wind the video up after that. So let's go and have a wee look at the garden. Mo has taken over my propagation box and filled it full of chives. View from the potting shed. It's a pretty bright morning, folks, so not the easiest filming with the deep shadows, but I'll take you a walk around the garden. The daisies are just coming out. That lovely red lickness does its thing every year. A little bit of a thug, quite a easy to grow, vigorous plant. The anemones, the stilby. And that little shrub there is a Korean lilac. It's getting swamped by the perennials, but it will eventually push its way up through them. It's my pots of daffodils, which have been replaced just with some cheap and cheerful marigolds. My bikes have escaped into the tool storage area. The Canadian Amelanchier there. That's a white flowered Lychnis there, Lychnis coronaris albus. Peony just going over. Salvias, bergamonts, Aruncus, and away in the distance there the yellow flowers of Lysimachia or loose strife. And that birch tree, about 3 years old now, well 3 years in the garden. I brought it back from a nursery in the back of my old Duster, so it wouldn't go in the car now. My tree ferns, only one of them made it through the winter. Meconopsis are over. This is a interesting plant. I'll show you another one in a wee while. And there's the Aruncus there. And Wisteria, for the first time, has produced a few flowers. I really like the delicate blooms on that Thalictrum there. There's actually a rhododendron in behind it. The rose is looking really poorly this year. The passion flower is doing okay, it made it through the winter. See if we get some fruits on it. The rose suffered from my absence. Clematis in beside it, just finishing. The honeysuckle got a real hammering with mildew this year. What else have we got here? We've got some phlox, but it's not open yet. Delphiniums. Primula balfouriana, one of the candelabrum primulas, and lots of seedlings there. I have to get them potted up and give them away to the neighbours. That tree there in the foreground is Davidia and volucrata, which will grow up, and I'll take all the bottom branches off it so it will fill the airspace. And then in behind it, that purple maple will be grown right alongside it and kept lower. But just now, they're all getting swamped by the Clematis montana alba, which I need to get rid of. Paris polyphylla. And this is the plant I mentioned earlier. It's an Aracema, but I don't think I have any in flower just now. That's the postman arriving next door. Let me go and say hello to him. A good friend. Looks after us very well. Primula beesianum. Created a nice damp corner here, and these primulas are also seeding around all over the place underneath this broom, and some hostas tucked in here. A little herbaceous type clematis there, and then the stems of the Aracema that I mentioned earlier. What else have we got? The black foliage of the Ophiopogon underneath my boat. Some Bergenia, a strawberry tree, Arbutus unido. More peonies. Oh, and a giant Himalayan lily that has been absolutely massacred by the slugs. The peony's got one flower left, just going over. Winter hellebores, winter flowering viburnum. And then this sacrificial plant, which I need to get rid of at some point, the Parthenocissus, is a nurse plant just to cover the shed until the cotoneasters in behind and beneath get up and do their thing. So the cotoneasters are really beginning to make their presence felt. So, little palm tree there. Doesn't look like it's doing much, but it will be producing roots. What have we got on this border here? Japanese star magnolia, a few daisies for a bit of summer colour. The onions have gone over, so I need to take the leaves off the bottom and plant something underneath. I usually leave the dead heads until the wind knocks them over. That's the Korean lilac I was mentioning. There is another lilac in that other border. A European one. And a crop of flowers just ready to expand on the hydrangeas there. So there you go, a wee glimpse at the garden.